A yogi, doer of selfless action, surpasses all ascetics, men of knowledge as well as those of action. So Lord Krishna's final counsel to Arjun is that he should be a yogi. This necessitates an appraisal of what all these types are. The ascetic is one who practices severe austerities and mortification of the body, mind, and the senses to shape the yoga which has not yet started flowing through him like an unimpeded current. The doer is one who is engaged in the ordained task after knowing it, but who applies himself to it without either making an appraisal of his own strength or a sense of dedication. He is just engaged in the carrying out of an enterprise. The man of knowledge, follower of the way of knowledge, is engaged in the performance of the deed of yajna only after gaining a full understanding of the process from a noble mentor, an accomplished teacher, as well as with a clear appraisal and judgment of his own strength. He holds himself responsible for both profit and loss in the undertaking. The yogi, doer of selfless action, performs the same prescribed task of meditation with a sense of total surrender to the adored one. The responsibility for the success of his yoga is borne by God and the Yogeshwar. Even when there are prospects of failure, he has no fear because God, whom he craves for, has taken upon himself the task of supporting and upholding him. All the four types of action are noble as such, but the ascetic, the man of penance, is still engaged in equipping himself for yoga. The doer, the man of action, engages in action just because he knows that it has to be undertaken. These two may fail because they have neither a sense of dedication nor a proper discernment of their assets and liabilities. But the follower of the way of knowledge is aware of the means of yoga and also of his own strength. He holds himself responsible for whatever he does, and the yogi, the doer of selfless action, has cast himself at the mercy of his adored God, and it is God who will protect and help him. Both of these tread well on the path of spiritual salvation, but the way on which the safety of the worshipper is looked after by God is the superior of the two. It is acknowledged by Lord Krishna. So the yogi is the most superior of men, and Arjun ought to be a yogi. He should engage in the task of performing yoga with a sense of complete resignation. The yogi is superior, but even better is that yogi who dwells in God through his self. The last words of Lord Krishna in the chapter are about this. Lord Krishna regards among all yogi doers of selfless action that one as the best who, immersed in his feeling of devotion, always adores him. Worship is not a matter of display or exhibition. Society may approve of such display, but God is offended. Worship is a secret, private activity, and it is undertaken within heart. The ascent and descent of worship are events that belong to the innermost seats of thoughts and feeling. Yogeshwar Krishna says at the beginning of the chapter that the man who performs the ordained worthwhile task is a sannyasi. The yogi is also a doer of the same action. One does not become a yogi or a sannyasi just by giving up lighting of fire or undertaking of action. No one can be a sannyasi or yogi without sacrificing desires. We are not rid of will just by claiming that we don't have it. The man who wishes to possess yoga should do what ought to be done, for freedom from desires comes only by a repeated and constant undertaking of this action, and never before it. Renunciation is complete absence of desire. The Yogeshwar has then pointed out that the soul can be damned as well as saved. To the man who has conquered his mind and senses, his self is a friend who brings the ultimate good. But to the man who has failed to restrain his mind and senses, the same self is an enemy, and his malicious conduct causes griefs. It is therefore an obligation, a sacred trust, that men act to uplift their soul rather than degrade him. Lord Krishna has then described the yogi's way of life, about the place where yajna is performed, and the seat and posture of the worshipper. He has said that the place should be clean and secluded, and the seat made of fabric, deerskin, or a mat of kush grass. He has stressed the importance of moderation according to the nature of undertaken task in endeavor, food, recreation, sleeping, and waking. He has compared the restrained mind of a yogi to the steady flame of a lamp in a place where there is no wind. Progressing even further than this, the climax, the stage of ultimate bliss, is reached when even the perfectly restrained mind is dissolved. The eternal joy, which is free from all worldly attachment and repulsion, is salvation. Yoga is that which unites one with this state. The yogi who attains this state achieves an equal vision and looks equally at all beings. He looks at the soul in others just as he looks at his own soul, and so he achieves the ultimate peace. So yoga is essential. Wherever the mind goes, it is our duty to pull it back and restrain it. Lord Krishna admits that restraint of the mind is the most arduous, but he also assures that it is possible. Control of mind is achieved by practice and sacrifice of desires. Even the man whose endeavor is inadequate reaches, by constant meditation carried out over a number of lives, the point which is known as the ultimate state, the state of union with God. The perfect yogi is superior to all ascetics, men of knowledge, and those who are just engaged in a business. So Arjun should be a yogi with true dedication to Lord Krishna. He should accomplish yoga within his heart and mind. Thus in the chapter, Lord Krishna has briefly stressed the importance of meditation for attainment of yoga. The foregoing chapters contain almost all the main issues that are brought up in the Geeta. There has also been an elaborate presentation of the way of selfless action and the way of knowledge of the nature of action and yajna, as well as the mode of performance and their consequence. of the meaning of yoga and its outcome, and of divine manifestation and Varnasankar, the importance of waging war of action for the welfare of mankind, even by men who abide in God, has been stressed at length. In the next chapters, Lord Krishna will take up some other supplementary questions in the context of subjects that have already been touched upon and whose resolution will be of assistance in the act of worship. In the last verse of chapter 6, the Yogeshwar himself laid the basis of a question by stating that the best yogi is one whose self abides in God. What does abiding firmly in God mean? Many a yogi attain to God, but they feel something missing somewhere. When does that stage appear at which there is not even the least imperfection? When does perfect knowledge of God come about? Lord Krishna now speaks the state in which such knowledge is attained to. The essential precondition of this complete awareness of God should be carefully noted. If Arjuna wishes to have such knowledge, he has to practice yoga with devotion and by casting himself at God's mercy. But there are several other aspects of the problem which Lord Krishna is going to dwell upon, and he tells Arjuna to listen carefully to him so that all his doubts are resolved. The importance of perfect knowledge of the many glories of God is stressed again. Lord Krishna offers to enlighten Arjuna fully on the knowledge of God along with the knowledge that is here called Vigyan. Knowledge is the attainment in the moment of accomplishment of the substance of immortality, Amrit Tattva, that is generated by Yajna. Direct perception of the essence of God is knowledge, but the other knowledge, called Vigyan, is the attainment by a realized sage of the ability to act simultaneously everywhere. It is the knowledge of how he makes us undertake action and of how he enables the self to travel across the way to the identical Supreme Spirit. This way of God is Vigyan. Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that he is going to explain this knowledge to him fully, after knowing which there will be nothing better in the world for him to know. True knowers are much too few. Only rarely does a man endeavors to realize God, and among those who strive to do so, there is scarcely a man who succeeds in knowing his reality by direct perception. Now, where is this total reality? The entire sense? Is it stationary at one place as a corporeal body, a lump of matter? Or is it all-pervading? Lord Krishna now speaks of this. I am the creator of all nature with its 8 divisions: earth, water, fire, wind, ether, mind, intellect, and ego. From Lord Krishna, God has arisen nature with all its components. This nature with its 8 parts is the lower nature. The nature with 8 parts is God's lower nature, dull and insensible. But along with this, there is his conscious nature, which impregnates and gives life to the whole world. This is the individual self, but the individual soul too is nature, because it is associated with the other lower nature. All beings spring from these animate and inanimate natures. These are the 2 sources of all life. God is the root of the whole universe, both its creator and destroyer. It springs from him and is also dissolved in him. He is the spring of nature as long as it exists, but he is also the power that dissolves nature after the sage has overcome its limitations. But this is a matter of intuition. Men have always been intrigued by these universal questions of creation and destruction, which is sometimes called doom. Almost all holy books of the world have attempted to explain these phenomena in one way or another. Some of them insist that the end of the world is brought about by submersion underwater, while, according to others, the earth is annihilated because the sun comes too close to it and burns it. Some call the event the day of final judgment, the day on which God judges all beings, while others explain away the idea of doom as a recurrent feature or as dependent on a specific cause. According to Lord Krishna, however, nature is without beginning and end. Changes there have been, but it has never been completely destroyed. According to Indian mythology, Manu experienced doom in which 11 sages had sailed by tying their boats to the fin of a fish to a towering peak of the Himalayas and found shelter there in the sacred composition called the Bhagavad, which is contemporaneous with Lord Krishna, God, coming down to earth for his pleasure and dealing with his life and precepts. The sage Mrikandu's son, Markandeya ji, has rendered an account of the doom he claims to have seen with his own eyes. He lived in the north of the Himalayas on the brink of the Pushpabhadra river. According to chapter 8 and 9 of the 12th section of Srimad Bhagavat, the great sage Shaunak and some others told Shruti, a pupil of Vyas, the Markandeya ji had a vision of Bal Mukund, infant Vishnu, on a banyan leaf. But the difficulty was that he belonged to their lineage and was born only some time before them. It was a fact that the earth was never submerged and destroyed after his birth, but with all this, how was it possible that he had beheld destruction of the earth? What kind of deluge was it? Sotaji told them that, pleased with his prayers, God has manifested himself to Markandeya, who had then expressed his wish to see God's Maya, driven by which soul has to wander through endless births. God had granted his wish, and one day, when the sage was sitting absorbed in contemplation, he was towering. Furious waves of the sea hurtling onto him from all sides. The devil fishes leapt from the waves. He scurried here and there to save himself. The sky, the sun, the moon, heaven itself, and all the constellations were drowned in the flood. In the meantime, he saw a banyan tree with an infant on one of its leaves. As the child breathed in, Markandeya was drawn inside him by the inrushing air, and there he discovered his hermitage, along with the solar system and the whole universe alive and intact. Soon after, he was cast out with an exhalation. When his eyes opened at last, Markandeya found himself safe on his seat in his hermitage. So whatever he had seen was but a dream, a vision. It is evident that the sage had this divine transcendental vision this intuitive experience only after worship spread over years beyond reckoning. It was a perception by his soul. Everything outside was the same as before, so Doom too is an event that is revealed by God within the heart of a yogi. And at the completion of the process of worship, worldly influences cease to be, and only God remains in the yogi's mind, that is Doom. This dissolution is not an external phenomenon. Final doom is the inexpressible state of the total identity of soul with God while the body yet is. This is something that can be experienced through action alone. Whether it is you or me, we are victims of delusion if we judge by the mind alone. This is what we are told now. There is absolutely nothing else except God, and the whole world is tied up with Him. But it is possible to know this only when, as it was said in the first verse of the chapter, one engages in yoga with total resignation to God, and never before this. Participation in yoga is an indispensable necessity. God is all these and all knowledge, and the whole wisdom of the Ved has been breathed forth from Him. He is also much more. God pervades the whole universe, the earth, the fire, all creatures, and even the severe spiritual austerities that are practiced by ascetics. He dwells in every atom. God is the seed from which all creatures are born. Moreover, God is the righteous aspiration of the mighty and also their strength, which is free from all desire. Doesn't everyone in the world wish to be strong? Some endeavor to achieve it through physical exercise and some through amassing of nuclear weapons. But Lord Krishna affirms that He is the strength that is beyond all desire and attachment. This is true strength. He is also in all beings the aspiration that is propitious for dharma. God alone is the real dharma. The immortal soul that holds all within himself is dharma. And God is also that craving which is not inimical to dharma. Lord Krishna had prompted Arjuna earlier to aspire to the realization of God. All desires are forbidden, but yearning for the attainment of God is essential because we cannot be inclined to worship in its absence. This hunger for God is also a gift from Lord Krishna. All the properties of nature, ignorance, passion, and virtue are born from God, yet however He is not in them, they are not in Him. He is not absorbed in them. They cannot enter into Him because He is unattached to and unsullied by them. He has to gain nothing from nature or its properties, so they cannot taint Him. Despite this, however, as the body's hunger and thirst are caused by the soul, and yet the soul is wholly unconcerned with food and water, even so, although nature arises from God, He is untouched by its properties and activities. Blinded by feelings associated with the operation of tamas, rajas, and sattva, men fail to perceive the indestructible and the one reality that is God, quite beyond the properties of nature. So He cannot be known if there is even the slightest trace of these properties. So long as these properties envelop the worshipper's mind, his journey is incomplete. He has still to go along. He is still on the way. God's celestial Maya, the power from which the empirical universe is evolved, is most difficult to comprehend, but they who are always engaged in the worship of God navigate safely across it. The Maya is called divine, but that does not mean that we should start burning incense sticks as a reverent offering to it. It should never be forgotten that it is something that we have to vanquish and get across. They who contemplate and adore God know this, and yet there are many others who do not worship, men with evil propensities whose discrimination has been ravished by Maya. The meanest amongst mankind who are immersed in lust and anger do not worship God. In the following verse, Lord Krishna turns to worshippers. 4 kinds of devotees. O the best of Bharat, worship me. The ones who desire material rewards, the distressed. Ones who aspire to know me, those men of knowledge. The four kinds cover all worshippers. There are first those who do the appointed task because doing it will bring good fortune. They are the doers of selfish action. There are then men who devote themselves to God because they wish to be liberated from grief, yet other devotees long to have a direct perception of God. And lastly, there are the wise men, the realized sages, who have attained to the stage of reaching the supreme goal. Material wealth is the means that sustains the body as well as all its relations. So riches and satisfaction of desires are first provided by God. Lord Krishna says that he is a provider of means, but his words suggest more than this. The really lasting wealth is made up of spiritual acquisition. This is the real treasure. While a worshipper is busy toiling for material gains, God prompts him on towards spiritual achievements because he knows that spiritual merits are man's real wealth, and that his worshipper will not always be contented with material acquisitions alone. So he also begins to bestow spiritual riches on him, granting profit in the mortal world and support in the next world are both God's burden. Under no circumstances does he leave the worshipper unrecompensed. There are then worshippers with grief-laden hearts. There are also among worshippers of God men who wish to know him fully, men who have attained knowledge of God by perception also worship him. Thus, according to Lord Krishna, 4 kinds of men are his devoted adorers. But of all of them, the worshipper with the wisdom that comes from perception is the most superior. The significant point is, however, that this sagacious man is a devotee too. Among all these kinds of all worshippers, they love God most, who have been enlightened by perception and who therefore abide in him with single-minded devotion. This feeling is reciprocated, for God also loves this worshipper more than anyone else. This wise man corresponds to God, and all the 4 kinds of worshippers are portrayed as generous. But what charity have they shown? Does God benefit by a worshipper's devotion? Do they give him something he does not have? Obviously, the answer to all these questions is a clear no. It is really God alone who is magnanimous. He is ever ready to save souls from degradation. So generosity is also a quality of those who wish that their souls are not debased. We have thus a case where here of mutual clarity there are all, both God and his worshippers, generous. But according to Lord Krishna, the worshipper endowed with knowledge is identical with him because that discriminating worshipper dwells in him, and with faith that he is his sublime goal. In other words, he is God, he is within him. There is no separation between God and him. The same idea is re-emphasized in the next verse. The enlightened sage, who is at least blessed with perception after meditating for many births, undertakes divine adoration with the conviction that Lord Krishna is everything. Such a sage is the most rare. He does not worship any external entity called Vasudeva, but rather feels the presence of God within his own self. This is the man with discrimination, whom Lord Krishna also describes as a seer. Only such realized sages can instruct the human society that is outside them. These seers, who have directly perceived reality, are, according to Lord Krishna, the most rare. So all men should worship God because he is the giver of spiritual glory as well as pleasure, yet people do not worship him. The paradox is accounted for in the following verse. Bereft of discernment because of their craving for sensual pleasures, ignorant men are unable to see that the enlightened sage, the accomplished teacher, and God alone have real worth. So urged by their nature, or rather by merits, they have earned the stored through many lives, they resort to current creed and practices and devote themselves to the worship of other gods. Here, for first time, the Geeta makes mention of other gods. It is God who imparts the quality of unflinching firmness to the devotion of worshippers who adore other gods because they wish for material rewards. It is God who makes the faith in other gods steady. Had gods really existed, this task would have been accomplished by these entities themselves. But since they are only a myth, it is God who has to render the faith of worshippers in them and firm and strong. Possessed of faith that is propped up by God, the desire-ridden worshipper devotes himself with renewed vigor to the adoration of some unworthy gods, but surprisingly he too is rewarded with the desired satisfaction. But this satisfaction is also a gift from God. So God is also the bestower of enjoyment, of worldly pleasures, mean pleasure rather than divine bliss is a reward for those who worship other gods for satisfaction of their desires. But in a way they are rewarded. So there seems apparently nothing wrong with the form of worship, however. This is what Lord Krishna has to say on the question. The prizes won by these ignorant men are destructible. They are impermanent because they are worldly pleasures which have a beginning and an end. The pleasures that are with us today slip away from us tomorrow. Men who worship other gods acquire powers that are themselves perishable. The whole world, from the level of divinities to that of the lowest creatures, is mutable and subject to death. On the contrary, the man who worships God attains to him, and so to the ineffable peace that descends on the soul after he is united with God. Yogeshwar Krishna exhorted Arjuna earlier to foster God's, that is, pious impulses through the observance of yajna. Good fortune cures from an increasing and strengthening of these riches, and ultimately, with gradual progress, there is the attainment of perception and supreme peace. In this context, gods represent forces of piety by which the divinity of God is secured. These godly impulses that have to be fostered are the means for salvation, and their 26 attributes are enumerated in chapter 16. The rigorousness which garners the sanctity of God within the worshipper's heart is named God. It was at the outset something internal. With the passage of time, people began to visualize these qualities in palpable forms, so idols were made, the karmakand was devised, and the truth was lost sight of. Lord Krishna has attempted to refute the misconception about gods and goddesses in verses 22-23 of the present chapter. Naming other gods for the first time here in the Geeta, he has emphatically said that they do not exist. Whenever faith inclines, it is he who supports it and makes it firm, and it is also he who provides rewards for this faith. But these rewards are finite and perishable. Fruits are destroyed, gods are destroyed, and worshippers of these gods are also destroyed. So only the ignorant who are lacking in discrimination worship other gods. Later, Lord Krishna will even go to the extent of affirming that such worship is an impiety. There is nothing like gods, and the rewards to their worship are ephemeral. All this notwithstanding, all men are not devoted to God. This is so because men who are bereft of discernment are, as we have seen in the last verse, only inadequately aware God's perception and magnificence. It is for this reason that they deem the unmanifest God as assuming a human form. In other words, Lord Krishna was a yogi in the body of a man, verily a Yogeshwar, a Lord of Yoga, the one who is a yogi himself and has the ability to impart yoga to others is called Yogeshwar, an accomplished teacher. Adapting to the right form of your worship, and with gradual refinement, sages also come to abide in that state. Although wearing the apparel of a human body, they at last abide in the formless, unmanifest God. But ignorant men yet regard them as ordinary human beings. How can they be God? These men think, when they were born just like them. They are hardly to blame for this, for their deluded minds, wherever they look, see only the external form. Yogeshwar Krishna now explains why they are unable to see the spirit embodied within the physical body. For an ordinary man, Maya, the power by which God evolves the physical universe, is like a thick screen behind which God is completely hidden. Beyond this yogamaya or the practice of yoga, there is also another curtain. It is only by a constant and long practice of yoga that the worshipper reaches the culminating point of yoga where the hidden God is perceived. Yogeshwar Krishna says that he is hidden by his yogamaya and only they who have secured yoga can know him. Since he is not manifest to all, the ignorant and unwise man does not know him. The birthless, eternal, and unmanifest. Arjuna initially regarded Lord Krishna as just another mortal, but after he is enlightened and his vision is enlarged, he begins to plead and beg. By and large, it is only too true that we are no better than blind men in the matter of recognizing the unmanifest soul of sages and great men.